6 of the most likely reasons why she ghosted you. I'm Paul, apexmindset.net to book a consultation. Hit the subscribe button, notification bell, like the video, share it. Okay, let's talk about ghosting. All right. So there are several reasons why when you're texting a girl, whether it's off of the dating apps or somebody you've just met or whatever, there's several reasons why she probably ghosted you or why she might have ghosted you. First, though, I'm going to cover a BuzzFeed study. Not exactly the most scientifically done study, but and then they published this BuzzFeed poll, basically, is what it ended up being, as to why girls ghosted a guy, what reasons they put. And so, in different reasons, of course, why they would, ghost somebody. So 81% had said that they ghosted somebody because, as quote in the study, I wasn't into him. Number two, second reason was 64% said they did something I disliked. 3 was I was in a bad emotional state. 45% of the women's 45% of women put that as one of the reasons. 4, I was afraid of them. 28% put that as one of the reasons. 5, I was angry at them. 26%. So these are the reasons women gave in the study. I mean, obviously the percentages are, out of those asked, some would say yes or no. I don't know how they did the study, to be honest, but it's not that important because it's not that scientific. But there's a point I want to make with this is that you can't ask women for advice on this stuff because most of the time they're not going to give exactly the straight answer. I'm going to give you the 6 real reasons why in a second, but I kind of want to review this stuff. Look, women just make decisions when it comes to their sexual and mating decisions. They usually just make them. They're not always well thought out. Okay. I'm not going to say every single time, but most of the time it's an instinctual decision that goes through their emotional centers and they make a decision based on how they're feeling. They don't know actually why they're doing what they're doing when they do it. All right. With most women, most of the time. Okay. And so then after they make the decision, they have to justify or give reason to that decision. All right. So this is the type of answers you end up with when you ask women about what their motivations were, especially in something like a poll, because they don't always know why they ghosted some guy. So they just assume, well, I wasn't into him. All right. That's more of an assumption. We're going to talk about what it probably is when we get to number 1. All right. But when they get distracted or they're just not paying attention, I wasn't into them isn't really the reason necessarily. And I'll get into that. Okay. Or they have to say, well, they did something I didn't like. A lot of times that's not the case. They're just having to come up with a reason why they felt the way that they did. Okay. This is why text game is so important, because they're going to make decisions based on emotions and justify it later. All right. There could be plenty of guys that they just didn't text back that were good matches. And there's a number of reasons why that could have turned out that way. And they assume after the decision is made, well, I didn't like him, or I wasn't into him, or he did something I didn't like. I mean, it's not that the BuzzFeed answers are completely inaccurate, but they're definitely put through the filter of justifying after the fact. And so I wanted to make that point starting off, is that women tend to justify after the fact when they make mating decisions. All right. So you have to be aware of that when you're handling women in your life and when you're trying to figure out someone's motivation and so on. Okay. So let's look at the real reasons. All right. So the real reason number 1, and this is in order of most likely. Obviously, it's going to depend on the situation. And no, this is not comprehensive. There could be other outside reasons, but these are the most common things that I see from not only myself, but from my past experiences, but from coaching men every single week who are handling women, dating women, texting women, and getting results with women, right? And so here's some of the common patterns. The most common pattern that I see is that she is simply distracted. Okay. Women, and this is especially true with the younger ones. All right. The younger they are, the more likely they're just going to get distracted and just not text you back. Well, this is an important thing to understand. They've done this test before. Different groups and stuff have covered this. You can go look it up, where a guy will create a profile picture and he'll put a hot picture of a hot girl on there, or even in just above average girl, right? And she'll throw it on a dating app or whatever, like Tinder or something. And that person's account will get hit after hit after hit, all right, of guys interested, trying to open her, and matches. Whereas we're talking in some cases in really busy areas, could be as many as 500, 600. Some of these different case test samples showed like in a few days, 1,000 different matches. So a girl is inundated with so much attention that your message or even your conversation can very easily get buried out of all these conversations she's having. She just doesn't know you, and she's not that invested in you, at least not yet, right? You're just another person or an avatar across the screen. How many dates has she gone on that didn't turn out well? Probably a lot. So you're just another potential for one of those. Are you a potential for a good match? Yeah, sure you are. But how does she know that just from a simple opener, how you doing and good, and then you say something and then she doesn't respond, right? Like, how's she going to know whether you're higher SMV, lower SMV, a good match or not? She just doesn't. So the most likely scenario is she's simply distracted. Even if you get her number or are DMing her on social media or something like that, she still has tons of interest from other men, plus other things to do. And she has an abundance, right? If guys listening here, have you ever had abundance of anything? You tend to not notice little things around you. If I had a pile of quarters, you probably wouldn't notice the one quarter that just got tossed in the pile. You probably wouldn't even be able to pick it out, right? When you have an abundance of things, you tend not to notice things as easily, and you tend to be more distractible because honestly, men are a disposable commodity to women until that man proves to be that alpha man or a good sexual option for her. All right. So men are after her all day long. You're not that impressive. And that is why she probably didn't text you back. That is the most usual, most common reason why, even when a conversation started. So this is really important to understand because a lot of you guys internalize her ghosting, especially during this initial contact phase and the initial opening and first few lines. You interpret that as her just not being interested, her not having genuine burning desire, right? Or you'll interpret this at, well, I'm going to waste my time with her. She doesn't see me in my SMV. She might not even look through your photos really that much that particular day if she was distracted. And then she talked to somebody else. Next thing you know, she's down the line into her pile of hundreds of messages and she doesn't see yours. Okay. So you can't personalize this stuff. When a chick ghosts you, you can't make it personal. Now, if you'd gone on a few dates with her, if you had already had sex with her, that might be a different story. I'm not saying personalize it, but you want to look a little bit more into that, see where you went wrong. But you cannot take every little time a girl ghosts you, even if the conversation seems good, as a rejection on you, because most likely it actually isn't. Most likely she just has other things and you're simply an avatar on the internet. She just doesn't see you. That being said, though, that also indicates that you didn't stand out well enough. And this is why in my texting format, the formula I give you for opening and engaging a girl via text involves building curiosity, investment, and fantasy. If you're building curiosity, investment, and fantasy with her, you will stand out amongst hundreds of other guys who are just, hey, how are you doing? Hi, you look pretty. Hey, gorgeous. Hey, beautiful. hey, let's do something next week, trying to close too early without any investment. You see what I mean? And so dating market's a lot different now, especially in the online dating market. So if you're not building that curiosity, that investment, and a little bit of that fantasy, okay, of you two being together, then it's a lot more likely she's going to ghost you, a lot more likely she's not going to agree to a meetup or possibly flake on you, right? That's the main reason, number one. Number two is she's occupied with another guy. All right. Again, this is an order of most likely. Now, that doesn't mean she's in the middle of sex with a guy and her legs are over her head and she sees your text and goes, I'm going to ghost him now and not respond. All right. That's not exactly what I mean. All right. It's just that because she has so much attention from other men, she ends up talking to 10, 20, 30 of them, at least with a small exchange. And then for whatever reason, and it could have been for whatever circumstance, she gravitates to a handful of those. And so she's talking more regularly, even if she's not outright dating. And, you know, who knows if she's banging anyone, who knows if she's dating anyone, right? Those things could be there too as factors. But maybe let's pretend she's not banging anyone or even dating anyone. She's just freshly on an app after a break or something. Okay. Well, she's just probably talking to another guy and having that exchange a little bit more. And all of the other matches and people that she started conversations with are just on the back burner. All right. Another guy maybe got to her a little bit before you and they got a date planned for tomorrow. And she just doesn't feel like texting other people back and setting up, you know, third and fourth options or whatever it may be, or if you're number two, whatever. And so that's one of the biggest reasons, is that she is just interested and occupied with other guy or other guys, plural. There might be a couple more on the list that she just made this connection with. They stood out where you did not stand out. And so you're just another message in the fold, right? Now you can't take this as a full rejection or care too much about it. You just have to move on from that or whatever, but you don't know the difference between distracted or occupied with another guy. You have no idea. Okay. And so that's why reopening is a technique that you need to employ. Okay. Conversation goes cold. She ghosts. Reopening in a few days is something that you need to do. All right. Because these girls are likely distracted, or even if she is occupied talking to somebody else, you throw down a reopener. Maybe that conversation, that guy probably will beta-tize himself over time in a conversation, screw himself, trying to banter with her all weekend, right? Or whatever, either not closing or making himself look like a simp or a beta. And then you reopen, and next thing you know, you're on the date. That happens all the time. Okay. I talk to women all the time who are text exchanging with guys that they've met, and whether it's on apps or even in person. And this is a very common thing, where they're talking to a couple different guys, and one guy is an exchange that they're having more of an exchange with, and they might ignore a couple others. And then this guy proves himself to be not a good candidate the more he talks. And then boom, guy number 2 or 3 or 4 reopens her. She ends up going out with that guy. He seems more attractive. All right. Happens all the time. So reopening and even the takeaway is an important technique to employ. Okay. Number 3 is she just isn't curious about you. Okay. She's not curious or intrigued by you. She's not really going to be interested in going out with you. And so some of you guys don't know how to text banter that well. You need to get good at it. Again, you need to build the curiosity with your questions and small things that you say and demonstrations of higher value. And as you build that curiosity, you're also going to build investment from her. And then, of course, as you guys talk about different things together and you flirt and you play around, you're building a little bit of fantasy. These are the things that get you to close. They'll close at a high percentage rate. All right. So if you're not doing those things and you're just having lame conversations, or disclosing too much about yourself, I see that a lot too. She just doesn't get curious enough about you. And if she's not curious enough about you, then she goes conversations, right? She just doesn't care that much. And she's certainly not going to close with you. All right. If she doesn't really care one way or the other, just isn't that interested. Okay. So that kind of does fall in line of the wasn't that into him, kind of like that. But it's not about, again, it's not necessarily about being into you, because it's hard to be into somebody over text. They go out with guys all the time they're not sure about. They don't know if they're into them or not, but something sparked their curiosity. Something caused a bit of their investment. They want to learn more, or they're intrigued, or maybe they find the guy a bit attractive and they end up going out with them. They can't say definitively that they're into the guy because they haven't even met him in person yet. Okay. But it's a curiosity though that you need to build. And the third reason why she may be ghosted is because she didn't do that well enough with her. All right. Now, number 4, I would agree in the BuzzFeed one and this one that she just is in a bad emotional state. All right. Women have shit going on in their life. They do different things. They got things going on. And, if it's just not the right time for her, she's got other things going on. She's not going to make texting you or texting you back a priority. So she might ghost for a few days. Oh, she has some drama with a friend or somebody else, or gets drunk one night, whatever. She just stops texting you. And then a lot of times after they make a decision, they have to justify the decision later. And so maybe then she thinks, I don't know about him, right? And that's what the justification story she needs to tell herself. I don't really know about him, okay? Or whatever it may be, all right? And this is why, again, reopening is not a bad thing to do, because she could be unsure. I don't know why. We just stopped talking. She didn't even think about it, right? And she was not in a good emotional state when you had texted. And then later she's like, I wonder what happened to him. She might reopen you later, or she doesn't. But if you reopen her, she might be really susceptible. And so the first 4 here, if you notice, these first 4 answers, the most likely reason she's not responding to you, again, this is assuming that you haven't actually gone on dates or not banging her yet, all those things, okay? There's nothing developed yet. You're just texting back and forth. These first 4 reasons have very little to do with you, mostly things to do with her, what's going on with her. Other than the fact, of course, your game needing to improve, okay, and you needing to stand out from the other guys and build that curiosity, build that investment, build that fantasy. Other than improving on that, I mean, these 4 things have more to do with her. So you can't internalize these things as a flat out rejection, okay? You can't care about it, especially with some girl you don't know. I don't care how pretty she is, all right? I don't care how good you thought that conversation was going. All right, now number 5. Number 5 is you are turning her off, okay? You turned her off. You showed up as needy, weak, insulting, or possibly intimidating, all right? And one of those 4 things, intimidating in a bad way, okay? And so that could be why she goes to the conversation, is just you just turned her off with how you were talking to her and how you're presenting yourself. Some guys try to game too hard. They try too hard to nag and pick up and be funny and cocky and alpha, and they just screw themselves. She's another person. Just make a connection with this other human being, have a good conversation, and you'll be surprised where things go. Follow the format I've given you in several videos, close the meetup, and then meet up and see what she's like. It's just not that hard, but some guys overgame or put a little bit too much investment in her because she's pretty, or they don't pass her shit test. They come across as weak or even insulting. Anyway, any number of these things could be a turnoff to her. And so that could be why. All right. Now, I wouldn't care if one girl here and there ghosts, but if you're noticing a pattern of ghosting after having good conversations and you're unable to close and having a pattern of girls just sort of ghosting on you, you need to consider that your communication skills are not calibrated over text and that you are possibly turning these girls off. All right. And then we work on that stuff in consultations, or you can send me copies of your text messages back and forth, and we could make sure you block out any information you don't want me to cover in a video. I will give it a second look, but if I miss something, you can't be mad at me. All right. So block stuff out, send me some screenshots in order so it makes sense. So I'm not having to figure it out. And I can give you free advice on a Friday when I do a live show. If you're having trouble, okay, if you need to know what you might be doing wrong, we could take a look. Then number 6, though, is that she just was nervous. She has anxiety. So this is an interesting thing. Women can be, even the most beautiful women can be very self-conscious. Most of them are to some small degree. And you may or may not have run into this, but I've had clients who've run into this. I've certainly run into this to myself, where she perceives your sexual market value as really high. She perceives you as a high value man. And so then she makes a bunch of assumptions based on her own anxieties. Oh, he's a player. He probably bangs all these girls, you know? Oh, he's not going to care about me. I'm not pretty enough. He probably has tons of pretty girls around. Or just simply just doesn't think about it, just feels really nervous about, you know, continuing a conversation with you. And their own nervousness, their own anxiety can cause them to self-sabotage. So it's actually number 6 is where she's actually attracted to you. But she's just not sure and not used to feeling like that. So she ends up doing what, right? She ends up just kind of ghosting a conversation or breaking off from a conversation. And so again, another situation where a reopener and possibly a little bit of comfort can help you. And you might be able to tell within the context of the conversation if there's some anxiety there. But what's interesting is you won't always be able to tell, though. Sometimes it'll show up as her maybe not desiring you, her short texts and stuff like that. I've talked to a lot of women who had high desire for someone, but they got really nervous. They weren't sure what to text back. And although they did qualify to the guy and you could pick it out, it would be very difficult to do that, to pick out that was the communication there, unless you're really good with this sort of thing. And so you might, again, need me to give it a second look on a Friday, a live show, or if your text game just needs help, book a consult. But you might be running into that nervousness, that anxiety, and she just ghosts, you know. A good example, this is a real common one because it came up a couple of times over the last week, where a dude opens or says something on a Friday and then she ghosts because she's nervous about him asking her out for the weekend. And she doesn't, you know, she has plans for the weekend, or she doesn't want to commit to a weekend hangout with a guy she hasn't met yet, but she sees him as really high SMV also. And so she doesn't want to be in a position to say no to him and possibly lose the opportunity. So all of that anxiety happens and she just ghosts. And then later on, it's buyer's remorse from the decision. Like, oh, I don't know. Hopefully he texts me back. Well, he's a player. He probably had a bunch of girls this weekend. He probably isn't even thinking about me. That's what their self-talk is. And they don't even reopen half the time. And then the dude reopens her and then boom, ends up on a date, ends up getting first night lays, stuff like that. Okay. So I've seen that happen a lot. You can't always internalize it as being a you problem. All right. Sometimes it's a her problem. Most of the time it's her problem. That being said, though, you know, always take the personal responsibility and evaluate yourself in these situations. Hopefully that will help you. Hopefully that helps you understand the thinking and the thought process behind it. All right. It's not what they say, it's what they do. And a lot of times what they do, they have to sort of explain later when really they can't. They don't even know why. It was an emotional decision based on instincts. And this is how game works and why game works. So the moral of the story is you can't take it too seriously when a girl ghosts you, especially if you're not in an active relationship with her of some sort. All right. Don't care, move on to a degree, but also don't be afraid to reopen either. All right. Reopening gives you a lot higher success rate in 2021, where girls are constantly distracted all the time. The last thing is building that curiosity, investment, and fantasy, those things I've talked about in previous videos. That's what's going to make you stand out above the rest, build that attraction and arousal as well as comfort, enough for her to be curious and want to know more and end up on that date with you. Thanks again for the support.